What is up? It is Bet and Breakfast on a Monday following Selection Sunday and the start of NFL free agency, albeit the tampering period. Ben Heisler with Reed Wallach and Peter Dewey. The Monday crew is here, well rested, supposedly, and ready to go heading into March Madness. Fellas, we got a tournament from the women's side. On the men's side, I feel like it kind of set up very much so how we anticipated, where you knew that you had the Gonzaga and Arizona and then the two Big 12 seeds up at the top. And then everything just kind of sorted out, I think, fairly nicely in place. Any initial thoughts on what you saw out of the bracket, at least once everything came together last night?
Yeah, the thing I thought Auburn got a really good draw, and I like Kentucky's draw as well. My big thing I have I'm holding a Kentucky future, so that I'm just kind of banking on them getting a nice spot, and I kind of like the matchup they'll eventually get with Purdue potentially in the Elite Eight. I think that Kentucky's offense and defenses, they'll be able to counteract Purdue inside, and Purdue just doesn't defend anybody. So I think that plays well for the Wildcats. But honestly, I thought they did a good job with this bracket. The only thing I was mad about was that Michigan got in without have to play in the first four. That was the only gripe I really had. I thought everything else was pretty good. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting tournament because, like we talked about before, I think there's just so many teams that have the ability to win it all this year. I don't think there's like a clear-cut favorite at this point.
Yeah, I thought the committee actually did a pretty good job. I mean, I didn't think the bubble was anything. I didn't think there was really any, oh, my God, they didn't make it. Oh, my God, this team. Like, it seemed like the 68 teams that got in were pretty clear. And maybe Texas A&M, it seemed like their kind of last week didn't count for anything. But I didn't have any gripes when I saw the bracket. I think you could argue over seeding and whatnot, but seems pretty fair across the board. Midwest, I'm pretty shocked they put Wisconsin and Providence in the same bracket. But, again, that's kind of like nitpicky. So I'm pretty satisfied with how the bracket came out. And I think there's a ton of intrigue across the board. And definitely I'm excited to dive into some of these games.
Listen, there at some point, I actually love the fact that Providence and Wisconsin is in the same bracket because at some point you have to test and see which of the two teams is actually the luckiest, right? Like
if they get to play each other,
if they get to play each other, inevitably somebody has to move on. We'll go through some of our favorite matchups in the bracket. Obviously, our first round predictions. We'll go through those as well. Going to save our Final Four national championship futures bets for a little bit later on in the week, which you'll be able to find right here on YouTube. If you're watching us there, we'll also have that available for you in podcast form as well. Also, some fun videos that both myself, Peter, and Reed are going to be a part of a little bit later on today. On the men's side, Reed and I are talking with ESPN analyst and also that of SiriusXM College Sports is Chris Spatola. He's going to break down the men's bracket with us. And then Peter and I are talking to one of the bigger insiders in the women's game, Howard Megdal, going to join us a little bit later on today as well. So plenty of coverage on both the men's and women's side right here for you on BetSided. I think before we really dive into the brackets, I just want to take a minute or two and just give a big thumbs down to the GOAT Tom Brady for ruining Selection Sunday, at least initially deciding to be incredibly selfish and announcing his return to the NFL right as the brackets are coming out. Big thumbs down opportunity by him. He could have waited maybe a little bit later when there was a lull, something that we could have had a little bit more opportunity to discuss. I know that this kicks off the start of the NFL tampering period. Already seen some quarterbacks on the move. Kirk Cousins got a 1-year extension. I thought the quote that set it up best, and I want to give a shout out to Aaron Ladd, one of the local reporters here in Kansas City, who basically said Tom Brady had about 40 days with his wife and kids and just ended up saying, nah, I'm good. And anything to take away from Brady coming back? Obviously, I think it makes Tampa Bay a clear favorite in the NFC South, and then obviously their odds going up from 35 to 1 to win the Super Bowl to 15 to 1. But anything in particular with regards to Brady coming back stand out for you guys? And Reed, I can start with you on this one.
Yeah, I'm a noted Tom Brady stan, so I'm pretty happy to see the GOAT coming back to the gridiron. But yeah, the NFC also, I'm never really believing the Packers, so I still won't. But Russell Wilson leaving Seattle, the Rams coming off that Super Bowl high, this might set up for another Tampa Bay run. I guess that's the initial reaction. But yeah, I don't really think I didn't even like digest a post Brady Tampa Bay for me to really kind of make a new take. So I'm still where I was. But don't forget that they did lose Ali Marpet. He retired a few weeks ago. So that's a big loss to what was a vaunted offensive line for Tampa Bay. So that's something to keep in mind as we head into the official free agency period.
Yeah, you make a good point, Reed, because they brought back Ryan Jensen last night, which was big for Tom Brady to get his center back. I wonder if Marpet decides to come out of retirement now because
he's young. So he's young. So it's not like he retired young. It wasn't like he's a veteran. So we'll say.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, I feel like Ian McMillan, he called this 2 months ago, right after he retired. I mean, like it's just Brady was going to have a hard time staying away because he was still playing at such a high level. I was shocked when he said he was going to retire because, I mean, you could have made the argument that he was the MVP last year. So I can't see him stepping away unless his game falls off or unless he wins a Super Bowl and he wants to go out on top. I really think that's like his two ways, because he knows that like if he was sitting on the couch, and it's why he came back, that he would have been a top 10 quarterback in the league next year, and it would have drove him nuts probably. So that I don't blame him for that. The Bucs is interesting. I think the one takeaway I have is really this opens up somebody else to get Jimmy Garoppolo and somebody else to maybe land Jameis Winston. Like there's just different guys that were potential suitors to go back to go play for Tampa Bay. Now that leaves, another team in the running to get like a team out of the running to get them. So I think that'll be the interesting dominoes to fall. We've obviously seen so many quarterback dominoes to fall already, but I think just like Tampa Bay, I thought was going to go hard after a quarterback because they still do have a very good roster, even if Tom Brady isn't there. And now that they brought back Chris Godwin. So the fact that they'll be, out of any quarterback discussions is going to be very interesting to see where everybody else lands this offseason.
Yeah, I think we had talked about it over at BetSided about how Garoppolo to Tampa Bay would have made a ton of sense purely based on scheme, purely based on a little bit of narrative as well. Okay, you already have Tom Brady. You bring in sort of that Tom Brady sort of miniature version initially that New England thought they had in Garoppolo. Just go ahead and slot him right in and just hope that nobody notices that it's not the GOAT behind center. I wrote up something for Deshaun Watson's updated trade odds, especially after Friday, where it looks like his value is going to be back up. And certainly teams like Carolina very much in play, the Saints, no longer the Buccaneers, but certainly Pittsburgh potentially in play. And don't forget about the Indianapolis Colts as well. Like if there is a team that is looking for any sort of consistency, especially just moving on from Carson Wentz the way in which they did, sent a pretty impactful statement. I thought that they are doing whatever they can to try and make sure they get that position right, despite some of the swings and misses from Chris Ballard along the way. So plenty to watch out for. I know that our guys over at Stacking the Box over on FanSided are going live today at noon Eastern to start off the tampering period. Make sure you guys check them out. Matt Verderame, Mark Carman are going to be on for a part of that as well. All right. Free agency, got that out of the way. Obviously, plenty to talk about more as that comes up.
It's March though. Come on, let's talk some brackets. Let's talk some college hoops.
Okay, I figured Reed.
About Tom Brady out of here later.
Reed, I know that you were the one that said that you wanted to talk NFL this entire show. That college basketball just wasn't in the cards for today. So I know that this is not an era. I'm just kidding. All right, we got a fantastic round set. Do you guys want to go with first round matchups first? Do you guys want to go around the region? Talk about an opportunity in a matchup that stands out to you. The floor is yours, Reed. I'll let you kick things off. I'll let you navigate here. You want to go with the matchup that we should be betting right away, or should we start region by region?
I guess let's go region by region. Then we'll dive in and we'll do a matchup we like.
All right, love it. All right, so let's start with the West.
Macro, go and then zoom in.
Perfect. All right, so let's start with the West. Obviously, Gonzaga, the number 1 seed in the tournament. They come in, and then their road to the Final Four. I don't think is particularly interesting. because I think you're going to see maybe an intriguing matchup against Arkansas moving on to the Sweet 16. And then the game that I think is the most compelling, assuming that we get chalk in the Elite Eight, number 2 Duke, or excuse me, not in the Sweet 16, number 2 Duke, number 3 Texas Tech. Like, just very strong differences when it comes to stylistically, defensive effort from at least the Texas Tech side. That's the matchup of all of them that I find to be the most appealing. And I also think, as far as like first round matchups go within this bracket, Vermont, as much as I think we all like Arkansas, I do think Vermont can probably cover their number. But Reed, go ahead and start things off in the Midwest bracket. Give me something that really sticks out to you from here.
Yeah, I'm more intrigued. I guess I find this, when I first saw it, because this was the first bracket release, I was like, wow, this is a pretty loaded region depth-wise, because I thought Arkansas and UConn were 2 teams that could make a run in this tournament, and they're not going to be easy for Gonzaga. Those are 2 teams with really stout interior defenses that could put some pressure on the ball on Andrew Nembhard, and especially in UConn's case, match Chet Holmgren and Drew Timme down low. So I'm really interested if that's a potential matchup. But if we're looking at the bottom, if Davidson beats Michigan State, which I think is going to happen, they're alive to beat Duke. I'll be betting Davidson in that game. But if Duke gets past there, Texas Tech's going to smack them, like straight up. Like Coach K, I've been saying for weeks, months, I'm saying off Duke futures, and this bracket does not give me any confidence that they're going to the Final Four. Maybe they match up nicely with Gonzaga. I know they beat them earlier in the year, but this Duke team is based on talent and talent alone. They are letting open jumpers left and right. Texas Tech's no middle defense is going to make Coach K's head spin. If that's what we're getting the Sweet 16, Tech Duke, that's a Tech play, open, whatever, it doesn't matter. Tech's winning that game. So that's my, I guess, big takeaway. But I wouldn't be shocked if Gonzaga goes down the Sweet 16 either.
I like that a lot, Reed, because that's where I'm going. I think if UConn, Arkansas can both handle business in the first round, I think whoever comes out of that game is beating Gonzaga. Gonzaga is very good. Do not get me wrong. They're the favorites. I get it. I just think both of those teams can throw a lot of different guys at Gonzaga, and they're just more physical. Like, they're way more physical down low. We watched UConn in the Big East tournament. I mean, the game they played with Seton Hall, extremely ugly. No offense at all, but they are going to muck it up down low with you defensively. They're going to make you work. Like, I hate that matchup for Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga, part of the thing that scares me about them is like they play a really tough out-of-conference schedule at the start of the year, and then you go and play the WCC, which was very good this year. Obviously, San Francisco and St. Mary's got in. But, like, you don't face any of these Power 5 teams for 2 months, 3 months, and now you have to go and potentially face an SEC or a Big East powerhouse in the Sweet 16. I don't like that at all. I think both those teams are alive to upset them. I just don't. I haven't been sold on Gonzaga all year. I know they're good. I just don't know how much I can put into Holmgren and Timme carrying me down the stretch of the season. I really think that's the spot I'm like looking to take advantage of an upset for sure.
Okay, so if we're looking at both Gonzaga and Duke as teams that can be exploited from a weakness perspective, at the same time, do we then have enough trust in Texas Tech, who is not a good free throw shooting team, decent enough as far as their offensive output goes, but and we know what the bread and butter of that team is. And then you have Arkansas, who I think has won some critical games down the stretch this year. What I like about them, and I've talked about this with you guys, is that they were a high-flying offensive team a couple of years ago under Eric Musselman, and then they've slowly started to transition into being one of the better defensive teams in the country this year. 16th in the country as far as adjusted defense goes over at KenPom. Like, do we look at both Texas Tech and Arkansas as teams that are at least Final Four capable, and if not, who is?
Yeah, I think that, again, we're projecting into the future. We're looking ahead. Like, Texas Tech lost to Gonzaga. They held up nicely against them, but of course that Gonzaga has a leg up there. I mean, Gonzaga is still the rightful favorite to go to the Final Four for this region. I just think this bracket didn't come out so nicely for them where they're going to have a cakewalk where they can win every game by 15, 20 and never be challenged like they were last year. I think that a UConn Arkansas Sweet 16 is an interesting matchup. And if Duke gets past Texas Tech, Duke beat Gonzaga and they have the size to challenge down low. So, maybe Duke then becomes live. Like, I think that it's very wide open, this region, probably 1-5. Yeah, I could see UConn making a run, but again, there's a lot of talent here, a lot of interior defense. I think that this is going to be more of a physical region. And again, I don't think that spells necessarily nicely for a Gonzaga team.
What about as far as an upset goes? Peter, I'll start with you. If there's a first round upset in this region that you're considering, which one is it?
Yeah, I'm probably going to take whoever comes out of the playing game against Alabama. I just don't trust Alabama, man. I just don't. They have been so up and down this year. They did not play well in the SEC tournament. Like I am out on Alabama. So honestly, I don't care who wins the playing game. I'm probably taking whoever wins to beat Alabama. I already kind of have put my mind in that site right now.
And Peter, Reed, it sounds like you're already on Davidson. That's a 10 seed over Michigan State. Any other potential upsets that you're looking at?
Yeah, I haven't bet Davidson yet because I wanted it opened like 2.5 and I waited. Like I should have just bet it, but it's down to 1.5. So I might wait, or like I'm gonna be on Davidson in some capacity. Also, I know we didn't mention it. Memphis matches up really nicely with Boise State, and then they're a physical, athletic team that could give Gonzaga some trouble. I don't necessarily trust Petty Hardaway on a quick turnaround against Mark Few, but just keep an eye on Memphis. They reek of like boomer bust. We could muck up a game and maybe pull an upset. So just keep an eye on Memphis. But first round, Davidson, Michigan State is the only, I guess, small underdog I'm looking at. After that, I think Arkansas takes care of Vermont, to be honest.
I'm with you too on Memphis, especially over Boise State, although it's not really considered much of an upset.
Yeah,
but we do need to give Boise State, I think, a little bit of credit considering that they did win the Mountain West tournament, and none of us were wrong, and we all thought that they were going to be very beatable in a fairly wide open conference, but they did deliver. Now getting that 8 seed, but Memphis is going to be a handful, especially if they're locked in defensively and if they're making shots as well. As far as upsets go, I mentioned I like Vermont to keep it close. Not really much of an upset, but I will be betting Vermont against Arkansas. And I'm with Peter. I think especially with Alabama living and dying by the 3, it could be like that game for Iowa when they just mollywopped Rutgers in the Big Ten tournament because they were just making everything. And Rutgers is one of the better defensive teams in the country. If Alabama makes their shots, like they're going to move on, but they're so inconsistent and they shoot a ton of threes and they're not a good 3-point shooting team. So I do think Rutgers probably comes out. Notre Dame, similar situation. They're going to slow it down. I think it's a good, advantageous matchup for them. What about in the East? Baylor looking to repeat as champions from last year. They're the number 1 seed. You got a dynamic matchup in the 8-9 with North Carolina and Marquette. Another play-in game between Wyoming and Indiana on Tuesday nights that I'm certainly intrigued by, but probably not going to bet it. And then obviously a few other matchups that I think really stand out. Probably Virginia Tech, Texas, I think is going to be a little bit closer than maybe most anticipate. And then Murray State, San Francisco. Like if you're just a college basketball junkie, I would imagine, Reed, that this is probably one of those games that you're just circled from an excitement level because those are 2 really, really good teams in the 7-10.
Yeah, it's really annoying that they had to match them up. I feel like the committee always does that where like everyone loves these mid-major darlings and then like they match them up and like ruin all the excitement. It's like, no, it would be great. Like they're playing each other. Like, no, we'd actually like to see them beat like high major, like Big Ten teams,
Well, they set up the Kentucky Murray State Kentucky v Kentucky battle. Like that's San Francisco. I don't know where else they would have put them, but yeah, I'm completely with you.
Yeah, from this region, a lot of really close first round spreads is what we're looking at. Really competitive region. Baylor, the 4th 1 seed, Kentucky, the 1st 2 seed. So that's kind of what you're looking at. This looks like to me a pretty nice draw for Kentucky, in my opinion. I think that this broke pretty nicely for them. I think that they match up really well with Purdue. I know Peter has a Kentucky future. I too have a Kentucky future. I think really competitive region is how I'm seeing it. Again, the upsets to me are coming from the right side if you're looking at your bracket, but Virginia Tech I think is live. I think Texas might be I've been waiting for Texas to make their run, and I just haven't seen it. Where Virginia Tech, you finally saw them put it together, and Texas really soft front court. Virginia Tech great on the defensive glass. I think that they're able to. I mean, this game is going to be a rock fight, but Virginia Tech has the far superior shooting. I definitely lean Va Tech, and I also really like North Carolina. Just again, these are like really quick first round thoughts. If they're protecting the ball, North Carolina, Armando Bacot is going to absolutely eat on the glass. North Carolina can win that game big if they're able to protect the ball.
What do you like, Peter?
Yeah, I love this draw for Kentucky, but I am concerned about the Murray State, San Francisco. I just don't want either one of those teams. Like if I was anybody, I wouldn't want.
I got a problem for you, Pete. You're playing one of them.
Like yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Get one of them in the second round.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't either one of those teams just because I think they are two of the better mid majors and two of the teams that you're like, oh, this team could go on a run. Like so that worries me a little bit. I also think people are sleeping on UCLA, man. I think UCLA is going to go to the Elite Eight. I think they beat Baylor. I think they kind of roll through that top half of the bracket. I know that they weren't as good in the Pac-12 as we thought they probably were going to be entering the season. Like they obviously Arizona is just fantastic, but like UCLA looked pretty damn good this year. Like they are the fact that they're a 4, and I think this comes out well for them. Baylor's been banged up all season, so I think they can beat them as well. UCLA Kentucky matchup in the Elite Eight I think would be an awesome game. So I'm kind of rooting for that, but I also think it happens. I think UCLA is one of the better teams in the country. And you come tournament time, like you need those guys, the guard play and the go-to guys, and Johnny Juzang is definitely one of those guys. So I like the way this broke for them as well.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think UCLA's opportunity, because I think if we're looking at that top half of the bracket, like if you're actually filling it out, not necessarily focused on the betting side, like that's wide open for upsets, because I think neither North Carolina or Marquette can take down Baylor. I think UCLA can take down Baylor if that's the matchup that they ultimately end up getting. You're right as far as UCLA goes. Like that's a top 8 KenPom team. It matches in with what we talked about. Their inside is Reed like to talk about the almost famous category. They're top 15 in offensive efficiency, 12th in defensive efficiency. So they're in that category where 19 of the last 21 teams have won the NCAA tournament. So I guess I'm a little bit surprised that they fall into that 4C category, but they got some big wins this year as well. So UCLA a very dangerous seed. And then are we looking at North Carolina or Marquette as a possible 8-9 upset over a 1 versus Baylor?
I mean, if it's North Carolina, they could bang inside against Baylor, who's a little banged up in the front court, but no. I think UCLA gives some problems. UCLA a lot of balance, as we just noted. I went into the year down on UCLA, and I think they're now aptly closer to that 4. They are a 4 seed, but like closer to that 3-4 seed than a 1-2, like they were projected going into the year. So I think they're aptly rated, and yeah, I think the bracket broke pretty nicely for them. I'm excited to see a Baylor UCLA matchup. 2 Final Four teams last year.
Absolutely. Wyoming, Indiana, of course, that play-in game. The winner will play St. Mary's on Thursday. Boy, if you're Indiana, think about all the games that you've been playing lately. Like they might be able to beat Wyoming and maybe St. Mary's, but that next round, like you're just going to be so gassed. Like they will have played, I think, 6 games over a 7-day period, but I have to do the math. I think maybe over a 9-10 day period for Indiana, and I bet
Wyoming in the first 4. I bet 3.5. You could get 4. I think that game is going to come
Wyoming?
down. That game's going to come down to the last possession.
Yeah, and if it's the last possession, I don't have a lot of trust in Indiana. I'm glad that they picked up their play lately. Like the wins against the comeback against Michigan was legit. The win against Illinois, I thought they were terrific. Trace Jackson Davis was outstanding in that game. And then Iowa, you have, another Bohannon brother, screwing things up and doing what Bohannon brothers do, which is just crushing Indiana's dreams and hopes and ambitions. So that made perfect sense. And
TJD versus EK will be an awesome matchup. It's probably going to come down to like 2-man game. The issue is I think Wyoming has the better shooters on the outside, but like Maldonado versus Xavier Johnson, EK versus TJD, those 4 guys, that 2v2 matchup is going to determine the game. So I think 3.5, 4. It's a little too high.
Fair enough. In the Midwest region, we go for the NCAA tournament on the men's side. Kansas, the number 1 seed. I still have some concerns about them, even with as good of a season as Ochai Agbaji has had in Lawrence. You have another intriguing matchup between San Diego State and Creighton. Normally, you would think of those two teams from previous years as high-octane offensive teams. Not the case this year. Both of them have been in the better half on defense. I think Iowa and Richmond is fascinating. Like I kind of want to start there if we can. And I know that Providence, South Dakota State, like that South Dakota State right now is sort of becoming that very public favorite against Providence. Everyone's going to have South Dakota State as that 13 seed to move on against Providence this year. But Iowa, Richmond, like those are two teams that won on Sunday. Both were surprising winners in their conference tournament. I've talked about how Richmond is one of those teams that has like nothing but like seniors and maybe a couple of juniors. Like everybody on that team has played together for a long time, and it came through against Davidson in the championship game when it mattered most. There's still some flaws. And then you have Iowa, who is playing like far better defensive basketball than we've seen all year, and they're hitting shots, and Keegan Murray is one of the best players in the country. Like things might be setting up really well for Iowa, but they're kind of an all-in or all-nothing type of team. And so now I'm starting to wonder, like, does Richmond have a little bit of Cinderella in them, even against one of the more dangerous teams in the country?
Yeah, Iowa is definitely since in the past month they're playing the second best basketball in the country per Bart of Works adjusted efficiency metric. So this Iowa team's legit. I've been bought on them the past like 2 weeks. They're better than they were with Luka Garza. They're better on the defensive end. Keegan Murray is, as the kids say, a problem. I think that this bracket broke pretty nicely for them. I think Kansas, Remy Barnes healthy, so maybe Kansas has another gear that they didn't show necessarily down the stretch. But I don't know, man. Iowa, Kansas Sweet 16 is a really, really intriguing matchup.
Take the over.
I think Iowa gets past Richmond pretty handedly. Kansas, of course, wins the 116 matchup. I just think this is a weird bracket. I'd probably call it the softest region of the four of them. I think San Diego State, Creighton, I don't think they have the offensive matchup with Kansas, but in Iowa, Kansas, that's appointment viewing in the Sweet 16. And then I like South Dakota State over Providence. I bet that. And then we can talk about the bottom because that's where I think a bracket broke really, really nicely for a certain team that I'm invested in.
All right, go ahead, Peter, and then we'll get to the bottom of the bracket.
This bracket is the Johnny Davis Invitational, man. It's the Johnny Davis Invitational. The top. Reed made great points at the top half of the bracket. If we want, I'll jump straight to the bottom. Wisconsin's chilling, man. They're chilling. LSU has a new coach now. Like Will Wade got fired because of the turnaround. Like this just broke perfectly for Wisconsin because Iowa State, LSU, I don't care who comes out of that game. I think Wisconsin wins. And then like we talked about, like Providence might be done in the first round. So Johnny Davis and company, I think they kind of have a chance to get to the Elite Eight here, as crazy as that sounds, because I think we've all talked about how Wisconsin's a one-man show all year. But top half of the bracket, if Iowa can stay hot, man, I think they can beat Kansas. But I wouldn't sleep on Creighton. I know they don't have Nemhard, who's arguably their best player because he broke his wrist, but they played some great basketball in the Big East tournament. I think they beat San Diego State. And Kansas has been really good this year, but we've seen defensive games. You can sometimes pull off an upset when you just don't have, if you can really slow somebody down. So if they can get Kansas on an off night shooting, you never know. I don't think I'd bet them to win, but depending upon what the number is, I kind of like Creighton to cover if they can get to the second round in that spot. But yeah, if Reed, you want to take it away with the bottom half of the bracket, I love how it broke for your Badgers.
Yeah, you're much more confident than I am. An LSU matchup kind of scares me just because they have the defense to really give Wisconsin issues and also the size down low to really just – Wisconsin is one of the worst post defenses in the country. And Johnny Davis did not look the part against Michigan State. We'll see if that was the leg. Maybe a week off will help. We'll see. But I think this bracket broke just absolutely incredible for Auburn, who kind of sputtering into the close of the year, can't make a shot from the outside. But people are going to try and talk you into Miami or USC beating Auburn. Auburn's offense might be an issue, but they still have arguably the best defense in the country. Walker Kessler down low, one of the best rim protectors. They have absolute monsters on ball on the outside, and KD Johnson. Obviously, Jabari Smith might be the number one pick in the NBA draft this summer. So, again, Auburn, just looking at that path, I think they're easy Elite Eight. I think Auburn is kind of going to pick up a head of steam over the next 3 weeks. Again, if they could find their jump shooting and really give the ball to Jabari and let him cook, this Auburn team is going to be Elite Eight. And yeah, I'll take their chance against Kansas or Iowa. I think this, of all the brackets, I think it broke the best for Auburn.
Yeah, considering the type of conversations we were having about Auburn at the beginning and probably even middle portion of the season, and then I think they kind of got a little ahead of themselves a little bit and puffed out their shot. Yeah, well, so listen to some of these stats for Auburn really quickly. Over the course of the season, they were in the 95th percentile in net rating, 86th percentile in offensive rating, and 93rd in defensive rating. Over their last 5 games, net rating has dropped down to the 70th percentile. Defensive rating is still really good, like you said, Reed. They're in the 94th percentile. But offensive rating has gone from, what did I say in the beginning portion? 86th percentile all the way down to the 31st percentile. Like, at some point, the balance has to swing back in their favor. And if you're talking about like an advantageous setup and good draw, I think it's a good opportunity for Auburn to really get back on track. So I'm with you there. All right, let's wrap things up with regards to our bracket coverage and finally move on to I just lost my place. Here we go. Yeah. We were talking about the Midwest region. Let's move on to the South. You have Arizona, the number 1 seed in that region. Villanova, a team that I remain very high on in that bracket, although that matchup against Tennessee could be very, very interesting, but it's still an opportunity to fade Rick Barnes in the tournament. Perhaps this is the year not to do it. It's a murderer's row. Probably the toughest, I would say, of all of them, especially with the top 5 seeds in this bracket. And I still like Colorado State to potentially make a little bit of a run as well. UAB Houston, that's another potential 5-12 upset that we're starting to see more conversation about. I'm very intrigued by this, and I think that the very popular one out of this region will be Loyola Chicago over Ohio State. But first impressions of the South, Reed, and anybody that might come out of it, as well as any first-round upsets that you like.
Yeah, I don't think Loyola Chicago is an up. I mean, they're favored, and they're going to win. I think Loyola Chicago has a path to the Elite Eight. That's probably my hottest take from the bracket.
First-year coach, though, in Drew Valentine, who's done a terrific job, especially that they finished 4th in their conference, but ended up winning their conference tournament and really playing well towards the end of the year.
Yeah, but elite defense, I think that they definitely beat Ohio State, and I think they're live to beat Villanova. I don't know. I saw the bracket come out, and I go, ooh, that's a really nice path for Loyola Chicago. Also, Tennessee, I know they're kind of the flavor of the month, but Rick Barnes in the tournament, it's a thing, and it always seems to backfire. It's like the Matt Painter curse. They just, I have like my coaches that I fade, and then like you need to change my mind. And then when you do it, great, I change my mind. Scott Drew did it. Jay Wright did it a few years ago. Rick Barnes, I think I can never back him really to make a tournament run, so I don't necessarily see it. Their offense still goes through dry spells. But my favorite pick, I'll be brief on this, is my favorite bet so far for the first round, UAB, Houston, 8.5. That number is way too high. Houston, I know advanced metrics love them, but this team just, I don't know. They just aren't as good as last year, I don't think. They've been banged up all year. I think they're kind of running on fumes. I know they beat Memphis by like 18 or whatever yesterday, but they also lost them twice. They lost to SMU before. When they've played elite competition, they've kind of struggled. And UAB, I know they don't qualify as elite competition, but they do have an elite guard in Jordan Jelly Walker. I'm telling you, this kid might go for 35 against this team. UAB's top 10 in three-point percentage this season. Houston allows, against their pack line, a ton of three-pointers. They're susceptible to getting gashed. And I don't think their offense is that good. They're based around the interior, but UAB is a solid defense. They can generate a lot of turnovers. I'm telling you, UAB's live for this upset. And also don't sleep on Chattanooga either, but UAB 8.5. I have this game closer to like 4.5. So I'm all over 8.5. Give me UAB all day. I haven't been that high on Houston all year.
I love that you mentioned Chattanooga because that was the one I was going to throw out as my upset pick. I am just not sold on Illinois, man. Like every time I think they're good, they come out and they throw a dud out there. And this Chattanooga team's got some of the best guard play I think we're going to see in the tournament. They have two really, really strong guards, David Jean Baptiste and Malachi Smith. Like they can really play. Both those guys average over 15 points a game. So that's going to be an interesting matchup, I think, for sure. They also have some of the size to kind of match up with Kofi Coburn. So
Yeah,
intrigued to see how that game goes, for sure. And then I think also in the bottom half, like I said it at the top of the show, like I just don't think Michigan deserved to just get a straight up 11. Like I think Colorado State, I believe last night when I looked, they're plus 120. I think they win that game. Michigan is just not it for me. They have not. Like they played a really hard strength of schedule, but they went 17-14. Like everybody's made such a big deal about, oh, they played the third hardest strength of schedule in the country. It wasn't like they ran the table against that. Like they played very average against that. Like I get the strength of schedule argument, but like if you're gonna play 500 ball against the third hardest schedule in the league, like does it matter that you play the third hardest schedule? Like fine, sweet. So give me Colorado State in that matchup. I think David Roddy's gonna have a big game. I'm kind of over the whole Michigan thing. I didn't know if they were going to get in. I figured the committee would put them in because they were a preseason favorite, but I get them out of here in the first round, please.
Yeah, if things don't go their way, Michigan can crumble as seen in that Big Ten tournament game. Like that's a game that they absolutely should have put Indiana away at in a neutral court, wasn't able to do so. So I like Colorado State. I've talked about them as a team that I liked as a sneaky Final Four pick as well, much earlier in the year. Obviously, in this region, that's probably not going to be the case. I will say this about Villanova versus Loyola Chicago, because you're right, Reed. Like from a standpoint of how Loyola Chicago defends and their pace, like, yeah, it's going to be a close game. But what I love about Villanova is their experience. They don't turn over the ball. They're the number one free throw shooting team in the country. And it's a coach that's been there with 2 national championships, that understands exactly what their strength is. For a team that plays as slow as Villanova does, they're still one of the most efficient offenses in the country. I think top 10. So they know how to get the right shots. And Loyola Chicago is a 30-year-old head coach who's done a great job, but I just think he's going to be a little bit outmatched here, especially given the players and the experience across the board with Villanova. And it's also part of the reason why I think if they play the right pace against Arizona, if they slow them down, like I would take Villanova in that matchup as well. Again, like Tommy Lloyd's first year coaching Arizona, he's been brilliant. Like you could have made an argument for him and Mark Adams as coach of the year candidates. And even though Adams probably is the winner, did the coach of the year candidates already come out? I don't even remember.
I don't think so.
Okay. So, but it's probably between the two of them, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Mark Few won't win. Yeah. That seems right.
But it's just, if Villanova slows down tempo enough, like Arizona in that game against UCLA, let that one slip away. Like there's been moments where when they can't control and dictate.
Are you talking about the Pac-12 tournament?
No. I'm talking about early in the year.
Oh, okay. I think Arizona's win the national championship.
They're talented enough to be able to do so, but I like especially quick turnaround matchup in the Elite Eight with just a day to prepare. I do think Villanova can survive and move on to the Final Four. So they're a team that I like to upset Arizona in that matchup. So plenty of intrigue in all forms of the bracket. I know we've gone a little bit long, but really, really insightful analysis from our guys over here. Curious to see who you guys listening at home at least are having moving on your Final Four and your picks for the first round. Definitely make sure you guys hit us up on Twitter as well. Let's dive into best bets. I know that we've gone a little bit long, so let's just fly through it. We're all looking at the NBA. No college basketball games on today. Peter, go ahead and kick things off, and then it'll be Reed and then myself to close things out today.
Yeah, man. I'm looking at the Bucks -2 against the Jazz. Milwaukee's kind of peaking at the right time. They're making a run. I think they might be might be making too much of a run, because I think you want to avoid the 1 and the 2 seed in the East, because you just want no part of the Nets at any possible chance in the first round. But Milwaukee's won 6 of 7. I know they lost to the Warriors their last time out, but over their last 10 games, they're number 1 in offensive rating, number 2 in turnover percentage, facing a Jazz team that's actually 17th in defensive rating over its last 10 games, and Rudy Gobert is questionable for this one. Utah is 7-8 this season without Rudy Gobert. Their defensive rating goes from one of the top 10 in the league to bottom 5 in the league when he doesn't play. So obviously an impactful player. And then the other thing I'm looking at in this one, the Jazz have been turning the ball over a ton lately. Over their last 10 games, they're 27th in turnover percentage. You can't do that against this Bucks team. They have a very stingy defense. Plus, Brook Lopez is back tonight. I think that's an underrated add for the Bucks. He's missed the last 3 months with a back injury. He can really stretch the floor for them. Obviously, helps their interior defense. Kind of lets Giannis play that like free flowing safety role back there. So I like the Bucks here as slight favorites. I'm kind of been out on the Jazz this year. I think they might end up blowing it up after this season because I just think they're in purgatory of they're going to do the same thing year after year after year. So give me the Bucks -2 tonight.
Who you like, Reed?
Don't be so sure about avoiding the 7-8 seed because the Nets might catch the 6 seed, which goes into my handicap. The Clippers plus now 6.5 at WinBet, but 6 obviously works too. The Cavs in a bit of a tailspin over the last 2 weeks. They are 27th in net rating, 2-5 over the last 7. They're playing a Clippers team 4-3 over the last 7, about league average. So team just playing a little bit more competent ball. They thrive as an underdog. I can't lay this many with the Cavs given their injuries, given how their offense has kind of sputtered. I just like grabbing this many points with a frisky Clippers team.
All right, Clippers now plus 6.5 on the road against the Cavaliers. All three of us going with road teams today. I like Chicago -4 against Sacramento. The Kings are 2-8 in their last 10 games, not playing any defense whatsoever. They're 29th in the league in defensive rating. I also didn't realize this about the Bulls because for a long time they were a terrible three-point shooting team, and with the success of DeMar DeRozan in the mid-range, I just kind of figured they were middle of the pack, but I looked a little bit closer. Chicago stunningly they're the NBA leader in 3-point percentage. They're shooting 37.5% as a team. I think with Chicago, especially with Sacramento not playing any sort of defense, it allows DeRozan to have wide open lanes. They're not going to be able to guard him in the mid-range. He should have plenty of opportunities there. And Chicago's won 2 in a row. Getting Alex Caruso back already made an immediate impact on the defensive side of the floor. We'll see whether or not Zach LaVine is going to be able to play in this game. But even if he doesn't, I'm not entirely concerned. And also it appears that Domantas Sabonis going to be out as well for the Kings. So a little bit of a surprising line, only at 4.5, considering that he's probably out. But I do think Chicago, especially knowing the circumstances in the East with things starting to tighten up a little bit, that's a game that they should win and should cover as well. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. I know we went a little bit long today, but obviously a ton to get into. Make sure you guys are following us as well on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok over at BetSided, and check out all the continued videos that we're doing right here on YouTube. And of course, all the previews, all the analysis for the NCAA tournament can be found at fansided.com/betsided. For Peter, for Reed, I'm Ben. May all of your bets hit tonight. Until then, we will talk to you very soon. Enjoy all the madness, everybody. So long.